Hello and welcome to Season 9, Episode 11 of the Data Governance Podcast. And I am really looking forward to this episode because I always tell my clients and people on my training courses that data governance needs to work really closely with the data architects and your data architecture team. But a lot of people don't really understand what data architecture is all about. So I've got Jamie on the podcast to explain it all for us. And more importantly, explain what data governance has got to do with data architecture. Let's dive in and hear what Jamie has to say. Today's episode is brought to you by ER Studio, the trusted name in data modelling. Just like building a home, managing data architecture is impossible without a blueprint. ER Studio is your guide to clarity, collaboration and compliance. Built for data professionals, ER Studio provides the essential tools to visualise, document and manage your enterprise data. Visit erstudio.com to learn more how ER Studio integrates all your source systems, ensures governance at every level, streamlines data sharing across your organisation, and even automatically converts your logical data models into physical models. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Data Governance Podcast. And today I am thrilled to be joined by Jamie Knowles, who is the Product Director for ER Studio at Adira. When I first met Jamie last year, I was absolutely blown away by his passion for all things data architecture. You're like the data architecture version of me, aren't you? And I've always worked really closely with data architects at organisations I've helped do data governance, and I thought this would be the perfect person to have on to explain what have data governance, data architecture got to do with each other, and how we can perhaps help each other to achieve the benefits that we know we can deliver for our organisation. So, welcome to the podcast, Jamie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. I'm really looking forward to our chat. So there's the obvious question I have to ask every guest on my podcast is, so how long have you been working in data, Jamie, and how did you get into it? I'm always fascinated as to, the data is not always people don't consider it an interesting career choice, even though we know it's great.
Yeah, about 25 years ago, I started out as an engineer, an electrical engineer building turbine generators, and then kind of stumbled into computer software and started looking at messaging frameworks using a new technology called XML, helps insurance companies exchanging data, which was interesting. You thought that'd be quite easy. All insurance companies talk about the same thing, insurance stuff, so communication would be easy, wouldn't it? Haha. And then that took me into architecture, which was something I became really passionate about. There were some really cool projects I worked on. There was one for the UK police force. There was 43 autonomous police forces. And at the time, there was a serial killer sort of going around the country doing nasty things. And he was getting away with it because the different police forces wouldn't communicate with each other. So the police put in place a program to try and understand the police force at a sort of a higher level, so we could try and connect these police forces together. So we built an architecture for all of the police forces. And one of the parts was a sort of a big old data model, a model of the information that police forces use. So we try to standardize those definitions, like what is a offender or suspect or person, what term we're going to use, what's the accepted definition of one, and what are the important attributes, and how do you identify an instance of one of these things, and what do they relate to? So yeah, really interesting.
Oh, wow. That sounds absolutely fascinating. So you can see why, you then get drawn into it. So, you've already started. We're both already using the term data architecture, and I already said in the welcome that, yeah, I think it's a really vital data management discipline. Not one I'm an expert in, but I've always looked for the data architect. So, for my listeners, could you explain, if they don't already know, what is data architecture, and why should you care about it?
Yeah, so I think we should explain some terms. So there's the term design, documentation and architecture. So they're the three words I think we need to use. So design is all about taking some basic requirements, can be quite woolly, taking through to something solid that can be built. So that's a key part of what we do, building blueprints. And it's a little bit like sort of an architect building a house or a building. The customer comes along with their sort of ideas for what they want, and the architects will sketch out a sort of a high level design, a picture. Is this what you're looking for, Mr. Customer? And they go, oh, yeah, that's what I want. And then they'll start to harden it up with solid blueprints for sort of the wiring diagrams and the plumbing and the bricks and all the bits and bobs. So that's what we do. And for data, we'll start off creating models. So we'll start off with a logical model that is in business language, just faithful to the information, independent of all the technology. And we can look at that and talk about it with the stakeholder who's non-technical, and we've got something to agree on. We've got a good picture. And once we've agreed on that, before we actually sort of do any actual work, we can then move to the next stage where we then create a physical blueprint that talks about all the sort of the wiring side of things and is linked to the technology that we're going to use. We can then agree on that again before we waste any money on building something. And when we've agreed on that, great, off we go. We can build it. So that's the first thing, that design process.
Yeah.
But like with a building, you don't want to start designing everything from scratch. You're going to reuse patterns. So like with your architects in your building, you said, oh, we need a door here. So, well, instead of designing a door from scratch, we'll have an architectural pattern. A door is this height, this
Yeah.
width. It's got a handle at this point and hinges. I've got a two hinge or a three hinge design, and we'll reuse that so that all the rooms in our building are sort of consistent. We know how to operate this house. If a door breaks, we can go to the store and buy a new door that we know is going to fit. So that reusing the patterns is really important. So yeah, so we design things and we're going to use these reusable patterns. And then another part of what we do is documenting things, so understanding something before we can change it.
Ah, that would be good, wouldn't it? Actually knowing what we've got where.
Yeah, that's it. A big important question, isn't it? Yeah.
So I suppose it's why could you articulate a bit further into like why we need to care about it? Because I was doing some training for somebody earlier in the week, and I was telling them all the role titles of other people in your organization who might be able to support you as you first start doing data governance. And one of those roles that I always share is data architect. And the people on the call went, oh, we don't have them. And they went, what, you don't have a data architecture team? And they went, no, 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 we don't have that whatsoever. No data modeling, no data design or anything. So, so clearly you don't have to have data architecture to
Mm.
exist and have systems and data on those systems. So, what's the difference between that organization, who I'm obviously not going to name publicly, to one that has embraced data architecture? Why do you need to care about it?
I guess it's the same as with your building a house. You could go straight to the builder and say, hey, I've got some requirements here. Can you go and build me my house? And if you've got a good builder that is skilled at taking requirements and creating something that you want, great. If that builder has had lots of experience and understands all the standard patterns and how we identify what a customer is, and there are 10 different types of customer and the differences between them when he's building this system, great. He's doing architecture in his head, but it gets risky as sort of projects get more complicated. You're really relying on the skill of those people. So it'd be much safer for the organization to have a team of people that their job is really to sort of build those architectural patterns for a business. Also, if you're not building anything, then why do you need architects? But I think most companies are building something. So applications and systems, yeah, fewer companies are building them in-house. They're buying sort of off-the-shelf packages. But when you buy those off-the-shelf packages, generally you want to integrate them with other systems, integrate them with the other
Yes.
packages that you buy. So understanding the information of those systems and how that information is going to flow is a big question. So you are designing something. And then, of course,
Designing that connection. So I suppose
that's
this is
it.
all about improving the interoperability, which I could never say, but I didn't do too badly that time.
Well done. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, there's the big one. We're all talking about sort of data is the new oil. Analytics is a really big thing. So we want to get all our information together and start creating some insights on it. So we need to design that analytics platform, which is usually sort of centered around some sort of store of data, a data warehouse or a lake house. So yeah, most companies are designing something that involves their data. So really, they should be doing some architecture, and not relying on sort of the skills of a few individuals, and also documentation.
Yeah. So you know what you're reminding me of? So I don't know if you ever watch Grand Designs with Kevin McLeod. And he's really quite scathing when people try to build houses without an architect involved. And it's kind
Actually,
of, and it's almost like it sounds like you're saying you don't have to have one. You can build a house without an architect. You can build your systems without a data architect. But actually its usefulness, its value to us is going to be diminished because of that. It probably won't connect with everything else we want it to connect with so well.
yeah, absolutely. And I think also as things get more complicated, so especially with the world of analytics, there's a sort of a view that let's get stuff out quickly. I want sort of reports and data sets created as quickly as possible. And there's been various studies on the use of sort of good design and architecture, whether you build a system, a database, or whatever. There's a chap called Martin Fowler that did a really nice graph that says, okay, we can start off really quickly if we don't bother with any design or architecture. But then as things get complicated, manageability sort of becomes harder. So adding more functionality sort of tails off. So there's a law of diminishing returns. Whereas if you start off architecting things, designing things properly in the first place, yeah, it's a bit slower to get started. But then you carry on growing, everything becomes easier to manage and more scalable.
Yeah, you're selling it to me. So, the obvious question, given that this is the data governance podcast, and I'm somewhat of a data governance geek, is so what does data architecture have to do with data governance? Can you do your bit and I carry on with my thing, or do we need to work together?
Well, I think it sort of offers a beautiful symbiosis. We're all doing similar sort of things. So, I mean, if you think about data governance, how do you go about it? You take a list of things that you want to govern. You set some policies for those things, and then you ensure those policies are being followed. So, for data governance, you'll that list of things will generally be a business glossary. So yeah, we'll create a list of business terms and then we work out which of those terms is most important and then we set the policies for them. So that's the first part of the process. The data architects have been doing that for 20 years. So if are in an organization where you've got a good sort of data architecture team, they might already have that understanding of all the pieces of the organization in terms of its excuse me, data.
Yeah,
And go on.
absolutely. And I'm a great fan of data models. I love doing conceptual data models with my clients as part of setting up data governance. But I think that, if you've got somebody that's been documenting these things, you've got some definitions and some really good understanding in data models already. So I always think that, if you've got data architects and data architecture in place, you can almost like fast track some of the setting up of data governance.
Exactly. And I think without that, what's your options? So you sort of take your data governance tool, your data catalog, and fire it out to sort of the whole organization and just get bombarded with a sort of a huge list of terms with homonyms and synonyms and sort of errors and stupid stuff. Or do you get everybody in a room and try and brainstorm it? And and then having that sort of business glossary arranged into a structure is really useful. So again, starting off, you might just have a flat list of terms. I might have 50,000 terms. Where do I start? What's the most important thing to focus on? So data models are really structured, and a good enterprise model will have sort of layers of abstraction, something very basic. What are the 50, 100 concepts of this organization? Great. Which of those is most important? Brilliant. These ones here, anything around customer or people. Let's start with those. And then we sort of expand on the detail. We've got sort of nicely structured blocks of knowledge with things that are related to other things. So that's a great starting point to help you prioritize.
Oh, absolutely. I just love conceptual data models. I talked one of my clients into doing one last year, a little bit of time of my time that they'd bought left. And I kept saying we should do these. And he kept going, no, Nicola. And then in the end, I went, well, what else do you want to do with this time that's left? And then he went, oh, go on then, do a conceptual data model. Now he's booking them in for every area because he suddenly saw how it gave business users an easy way to think about their data rather than tell me the thousands of fields that you use. And they're going, I don't know where to start. But we start with just a small number of boxes that, as you say, you can delve into the detail. So yeah, Anybody that has ever been one of my training courses or worked with me knows I absolutely love conceptual data models and I bore people rigid about them. So I must control myself now because I wanted to ask you another, at least one more question while we have the time. So, obviously we're biased. You think we need to be doing lots of data architecture. I think we need to be doing lots of data governance. We've established that we could work well together to actually deliver value quicker for everybody. But what's going on in the world at the moment that means that data architecture and data governance are now more important than ever before? Because it feels to me that demand for both is really growing very rapidly.
Yeah, I mentioned this earlier. So data is the new oil. So organizations are describing themselves more and more as data driven. We want to understand the data of our organization and get good insights from it, which can sort of steer our strategy and help us provide insights to do something amazing and make more money. So analytics is just so important at the moment. And as I said, warehouses and lake houses are really vital for this. But there's been challenges in the past with these, and that things sort of end up as these ungovernable swamps really quickly become sort of not very scalable and just a mess. So companies are starting to put more thought into their warehouses, designing them properly, using these standard patterns, having them aligned with the business and sort of the other parts of the business, all nicely documented, tied into our governance program. So the need for good design and architecture, I think, is even more important, and governance. I think doing things right means that you should be sort of thinking about governance from the get-go. So shifting left as we're designing the outputs of our warehouse, let's think about the sort of the governance policies and requirements sort of right at the start before we start building stuff. Whereas in the past, we'd sort of, oh yeah, just build the warehouse, build our outputs, and then the governance team can sort of follow along behind and document it and tell us about its policies.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because otherwise you say, you must do the same to me. I talk to loads of analytics, BI teams that say they waste so much time trying to find the data or work out what it is, even if they've got access to it. And then it's probably not good enough. And I tend to call all those activities data wrangling. So most of them are spending at least 50% of their time data wrangling instead of using their skills to provide this analysis and insights and to help people make the right decisions for their company.
Yeah, exactly. So again, the data architects can help out. So that wrangling, we've probably created models as we've designed a lot of these assets. So we've got a lot of the information that we can provide into the data catalog for you guys. As I said, sort of that initial business glossary or companies like Calibra, tools like Calibra will start off with actually using data models as their sort of governance framework in their sort of a guided data stewardship approach. So we can help you understand what are we going to govern, and then we can help you sort of build the technical data dictionary. All these data assets that are around the organization, we understand them because we designed them, so we can feed your data catalog and help you out. And tools like ER Studio can really help with that.
Excellent. So, as I award you in advance that I like to keep these interviews nice and short, so they're very easily consumable for people. But I just want to sneak in one extra question because I know you're the right person to answer this one for me, being a little bit selfish, but hey, it's my podcast. So, I would say if 3, 4 years back, the term data mesh was kind of everywhere. It was all over LinkedIn. Every conference I went to, it was being spoken about. So there was a lot of hype about it. But I'm not hearing people talk about that as a term so much. But the one thing that really came into being for me during that period was the term of data products. So I'm hearing a lot of people talking about data products, but not data mesh. So is data mesh still around? Has it died? What's happening there?
I think it's still the same thing. I think the intent of data mesh is still there, but it's now becoming sort of more pragmatic, and the real world is sort of built their own version of it. So the principle is absolutely solid. So again, with your data warehouse, planning the outputs of it. So rather than just sort of have at it, let's just create some star schemas. Let's think about the outputs in terms of products, and a product has to be something that is valuable and well defined. It's got a contract against it, it's a great way to make sure that you're getting good value from your analytics program. And it's great for architecture because without sort of good design and good architecture, it's going to be sort of a big old failure. But with it, it can be something truly amazing. There's so much value. And it's probably a topic we should do a lot more on.
Yeah, oh, that does sound good. I might take you up on that one. So it feels like data mesh is still there, but we're talking less about the thing that and more about the data products. And from my point of view, that's what's enabled. And from a business user point of view, they don't care how they get access to this data. And if the data product is the thing that they can grab hold of easily and use, then that's why we should be talking about that then.
I love it. Yeah, yeah. It's putting the sort of the products in the hands of the business. It's what they want, and they can define in their language what they need. And yeah, it just makes sense.
Excellent. That has been so interesting talking to you, Jamie. And
Likewise.
thank you for answering my questions. It's been really great. And yeah, I'm sure there's lots of supplementary questions there that I will want to ask you in the future.
Very good. Anytime. And
Thank you.
if I can say anything to your audience, so data governance people, go and find your data architects and talk to them. They can really help you and benefit from your input as well.
Excellent. I think that's a great final piece of advice. I have introduced myself to data architects at new clients by telling them I'm their new best friend, which can scare some of them off, but generally they agree and understand that we can work together. So I think that's a great piece of advice. Thank you so much, Jamie. And this has been amazing. And I hope everybody else has enjoyed the conversation as much as I have. Bye
Right.
bye.
Thanks, Nicola.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I enjoyed talking to Jamie. He really is like the data architecture version of me, isn't he? And I hope that you took on board what he was saying, particularly that last tip about if you're the data governance person, go and find your data architects. They really are your new best friend. And by working together, we can add so much value to our organization and help both of our teams work better by supporting each other. So I hope you will come back and join me next week for the last in this season, where I'm going to talk about the relationship between data quality and data governance. And it's an interesting one because they're technically separate data management disciplines, but I always recommend that they're done by the same team. So please join me next week to find out why I think that.